My guest today is Angie Carducci from Inside Hockey Magazine. I'm so excited to have her on. How are you today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Oh, I really appreciate you being here. I'm going to jump right into our first question. From print journalism at Duquesne University in the city of Pittsburgh to corporate communications to covering the Pittsburgh Penguins. What a journey. Tell us about what inspired you to take that path, and do you know where you're headed? Is this the path that you're going to stay on?
Well, I definitely plan to stay. So I'm full time in corporate communications. I work for a financial company, and that was a choice I made coming out of college. I did internships in both. I did internships in sports journalism and also in corporate communications. I really have to credit my advisors at Duquesne for giving me that advice, for giving me kind of the guidance to do both and give myself the options. And when I graduated, I was able to take either path. And when I'll never forget that when I first got out of school, I got offered an overnight news producer job at a local radio station. It would have been an 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. job, so you're overhauling your entire life for this, and they were offering minimum wage for that
Oh,
job.
great.
Yeah, and I thought, maybe let's see what else is out there.
Yeah.
And so I kind of ended up going the corporate route from that time on, but stayed part-time, doing writing and writing sports, and have never regretted that. I feel like I've had the best of both worlds in terms of having a little bit of consistency in my life and being able to, kind of support myself and family, and being able to it just feels like for me was a better choice than a lot of people that are in sports journalism are juggling a lot of gigs to make it work.
Right.
And I see the guys I'm in the press box with, like a lot of those folks are juggling a lot of gigs. And yeah, I feel like the 2 gigs is enough for me. So I'm really happy with that, and happy that I took that path.
Did you know that coming out of high school, that's what you wanted to do? Were you like, okay, I love sports, but I need some more beyond that? Or was it like, maybe I should just follow what this advisor says because he knows where I want to go?
Coming out of high school, I knew I wanted to be a writer in some way. I always wanted to be a writer. It's what I was good at. Still is what I'm good at. I always joke that I'm really glad that I have a skill like that, like that somebody's willing to pay me for, because that is really the only great skill I have. I'm a good writer, and glad it's a marketable, payable skill. But I thought I would be a news writer. When you come out of school and you go into journalism, I think everybody thinks they're gonna go into news journalism and change the world somehow. You're gonna be a hard hitting news journalist, and that's where you're going. And going into Duquesne, when I started writing for the Duquesne paper, I was a news writer, I was a news editor. It took me a few years to catch on in the sports department at Duquesne and to start taking that path.
Did you play any sports?
I played baseball and basketball,
Oh, cool.
never played hockey.
So what, like, I know I'm kind of sidestepping here, but why hockey? What enthralled you? I mean, I know that was a great time there, early 90s, the Penguins. I mean,
Got into hockey in the late 80s. I fell in love with hockey. I skated when I was a little kid. I figure skated. So I think that aspect of it spoke to me. And just watching the game and watching, wow, these guys can do it all. These guys are out there, not only do you have to be a skilled athlete, you have to be a skilled skater. There's so much that you have to be able to do well, and was just so impressed with the athleticism of the whole thing. It was just a really exciting time, I think, for Penguins hockey. I think the Penguins were starting to get a group of players together that were exciting to surround Mario Lemieux, and of course, hockey only became relevant in Pittsburgh around that time.
sure.
So yeah, I would say the late 80s, it really started to speak to me, and I just started to become a big hockey fan in general, I really, I love the Edmonton Oilers of that time, that era. That was who I kind of latched onto, and just went from there.
Okay, since you're part of the Professional Hockey Writers Association, when you reflect back, is there anyone you've met or read or interacted with that's had an influence over your journalistic approach?
I think for me, really the less so than writers, and really when I write, what I try to do is I try to tell stories. I like to write narrative type stories. I've never written for a publication where, well, with the exception of when I write playoff stories, I'm typically on more of a clock where I have to submit a story that's more of a synopsis of each game. But otherwise, what I'm usually doing is writing more feature stories. So I like to tell those kinds of stories, and less synopsis type stories of games, and more, getting into, I think people like people stories and like to hear about people. And so those are the kinds of stories I like to tell. But as far as who's really had an impact on me, I think when I was starting to go that route of getting into journalism and going to college, the two people who really stand out for me were Robin Roberts and Linda Cohn were on ESPN on SportsCenter.
Yeah.
And to this day, I'm a huge admirer of both of them. And I've had the incredible fortune to sit by Linda Cohn in the press box during Penguins playoff hockey. And that to me was kind of like a big fangirl moment. Like, wow, I kind of grew up watching you, and you're one of the reasons I'm here. Because when you see other women doing it, you look and say, oh wow, this is something perhaps that could be a path for me. So, I'm such a big fan of seeing the representation, and it's just so important. It's so important to see people who, look like you, and are your gender or your race or these kinds of things represented in the different aspects of sports. I think, and if you don't see that, you don't necessarily think that you can have those aspirations.
Well,
So for me, those two women,
that's excellent. That's
yeah,
excellent.
they really stand out.
George, she was transcended in the sport. I talked about her in my podcast a few weeks ago when she passed away. I remember
Yeah,
listening to her and watching her as a kid and thinking, wow, this lady really knows her sports. Like
absolutely.
I grew up in a house though that my mother and father were just diehard, hardcore sports fans. I can remember many
That's
years
awesome.
ago. I remember in '79 watching the Pirates win the World Series with my parents and watching
Hmm.
the Steelers win the Super Bowl with my parents. I remember taking my parents, both of them, to see Lemieux play when I lived back in Pittsburgh. So it's always been like in the blood, not just my dad, but my mother as well. And
Oh, that's cool.
me personally, I just kind of look at the person as, are they a sports fan? Nothing else. That's how I
Yeah.
view them.
You see, in my home, I didn't have that. My dad was a huge sports fan. He definitely got me into some sports. He really was responsible for my love of baseball. He took me to Three Rivers Stadium as a kid, and he was definitely responsible for me um, loving baseball, loving the Pirates. He taught me how to fill out the scorecard. I'll never forget that. That really, I think about it and get all emotional. And to this day, if I go to a ball game and see families filling out scorecards, that really gets to me. So I think he was responsible for that. He passed away in '87, and it was before hockey really started to take off in Pittsburgh. So he really never had a chance to get into hockey much. And you know, he missed that whole thing, and I wonder what he would think seeing what I ended up doing with myself, because I don't think he would have predicted this. But my mom was never really a sports fan, and to this day, um, she follows when the playoffs are on. She's kind of vaguely aware of what's going on, but not wouldn't call her a sports fan.
That's okay. I mean, my wife's not a huge sports fan either, but she loves hockey. She loves hockey.
Yeah,
And we both love watching our kids play. So and
it's
in essence,
great.
she is, but she's not like, I got to watch that game with you. She's just not that person. Um,
Yep.
you started covering the Penguins, if my calculations serve me correctly, right around the tail end of the time where they were the top dog in the Northeast, and then the decline started, 98, 99 season.
Yep.
Discuss what the transition was like as you were covering them then.
Yeah, I mean, it was a rough transition on the ice. I think the rougher transition really was off the ice and from the business side of things, just watching how things were headed. And you just really didn't get a very good sense that this team was going to be in a good position sustainably to keep fielding number one, a competitive team. For me, the big low light was when it became inevitable they were going to have to ship Jaromir Jagr off for nothing. um, you saw that happen, and it just inevitably was leading toward that. And uh, when it finally happened, you just shook your head and said it kind of like you it kind of like it feels about the Pirates now. You see a player like a Josh Bell and you say, boy, I'm really going to miss him one day. You just kind of shake your head and you just know it's inevitable.
Yeah.
So that was a really depressing time. And really what stands out to me is the fact that it didn't feel like the off ice and ownership and financial issues were going to be able to resolve in a way that was going to end up keeping the Penguins in the city. So when I think about those years and then into the early 2000s and what kind of turmoil they were going through, um, I don't think they were kidding in any way, shape, or form when they were shopping the team around, when they're visiting Kansas City. I remember this horrible press conference when Jim Balsillie, the BlackBerry owner, came to Pittsburgh, and they had seems like they had theoretically reached an agreement where they were going to sell the team to him. And he said all the right things about he was going to keep him in Pittsburgh. The tradition was here. He even held up his stupid BlackBerry. It had a picture of the Penguins logo on it. He was trying to be all authentic, but reporters in the room who were from Canada pretty much outed him as um, there were reports that he was already planning to move that team to the Toronto market and bring a second team to that area. So I just really don't think if that lucky lottery ball doesn't bounce their way with Sidney Crosby, I don't know that you'd be talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins anymore.
It's interesting you talked about that lottery ball. I was listening today to the Fan, and they were talking about how if the Pens drop out of the playoffs against Montreal in this early in the prelim games, as you would call them, the warm-ups, they have
Yeah,
a 12.5% chance of getting the number one pick. And I was
yeah,
like, so it's win-win in essence. But then they were talking about how their percentage to get Sid it was so much lower than that to even
it was.
him. It was amazing that we got that lucky.
Oh yeah, I mean it was shocking when that ball fell their way. Like what just happened, I remember watching it and just my jaw dropping. What they're getting Sidney Crosby. I mean everybody knew the name, everybody knew he was the next one.
Yeah.
And the moment that went in their direction, you thought, wow, this franchise could be saved. And really at that point everything starts falling in the right direction. The new arena starts going in the right direction. It just you can't speak enough to it in terms of what that did to save the franchise.
So you got Sid, Gino's drafted, the pieces of the puzzle start coming together for the next generation of Pittsburgh hockey stars to replace Lemieux, Yager, and crew. What were Sid and Gino like in those early days? How much have they grown since then?
Yeah, that's been a really fun evolution to watch. I think for me, to this day, kind of looking at them both and seeing them, as guys in their 30s, it's hard to wrap my head around having seen them, as in their late teens um, and coming here and just kind of starting off their careers. I, I think I think Sidney Crosby has grown a great deal as a quiet leader. Um, he in those early days there were rumors about him not necessarily coexisting well with some of the more established leaders on the team at the time. I think the Sidney Crosby of today might have approached a situation like that completely differently. But I really think, to me, the one that I have enjoyed watching the most has been Evgeny Malkin, just because he's such a vocal leader when he wants to be. And it's not always. He really has to sort of be prodded into it by circumstance. But when circumstance dictates, there is no more vocal leader who's willing to step up and just put himself out there on this team than Evgeny Malkin. And he's willing to do it despite not being incredibly comfortable in his grasp of English, which is perfect, by the way. He undersells his language skills. They're absolutely fine. Does he sound like a native English speaker? Of course not, but he expresses himself perfectly. Always know exactly what he's trying to say. I don't think there's any communication barrier at all. And I always try to quote him when I'm covering him and writing about what he says. I always try to quote him exactly as he says it. I don't try to correct the English, because I think the way he expresses himself is perfect for him. And his words are so powerful. He will put himself on the line and take accountability in a way that I really enjoy, because Sidney Crosby, I feel, as much as he is a leader on this team, he's the captain of this team, clearly. I feel he has been groomed from such a young age to be the superstar that he is, that he is not comfortable coming out with that level of candor that Gino is. And Malkin doesn't have that problem. He doesn't have that problem of trying to say the company line. He just comes out with what's on his mind, and I just enjoy watching that. So to me, I feel like that's the kind of leadership I like, is when you can put yourself out there and just take accountability and say, okay, we have to be better. It's going to start with me. And pretty much you see every time he comes out with one of those, he does take personal responsibility for delivering.
Yeah. I think he took personal responsibility for his season last year. By the way, he played this year. He was on fire all season. And
Yep.
you always know, like you said, like I always know from my standpoint, because my son and I don't miss the games.
Mm-hmm.
I always know from my standpoint that if Malkin has to say something, things are not going right somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
He really, as much as you're saying he loves to step up and be that leader right there verbally, he really, unless you
Yeah.
can tell too. You can see the action on the ice. I mean, he took it very personal last year. You could tell by the way he played this year. And recently I read, a little snippet that his wife had put out there about him, and I wholeheartedly believe that this guy's going to end his career in Pittsburgh. I think Mario is smart enough to know that having him in Pittsburgh for the rest of his career is just a good thing, along with Sid.
Yeah.
They're
There
aging.
was
They're aging.
there Yeah, yeah. There was a time that I did not believe that would be possible. I mean, where do you see that? Where do you see two stars of that level actually be able to be kept on the same team and finish out their careers together? It doesn't happen that often. And these two have really made themselves a package deal. Crosby has been very clear that he wants Malkin as his teammate, and Malkin's been very clear he doesn't want to go anywhere. So anytime you hear these rumors about, oh, Malkin's going to Los Angeles, he's going to Miami, these are starting from somewhere else. They're not starting from these guys. They're not starting from Pittsburgh. Evgeny Malkin, I also wholeheartedly believe at this point he's going to finish his career right here.
I loved how the guy that they shipped off to Arizona, we won't really mention his name. I loved how Malkin kind of kept him in check, and when he couldn't do it any longer, it just felt like they knew that it was time to move him on.
Oh boy, that was a really interesting situation. I still feel like, Malkin definitely has respect for him, enjoyed having him as his line mate. they played well together, but I just think um, I just think things sometimes with teams, with sports, are cyclical, and they have a shelf life, and sometimes a player on a team has a shelf life, and I just think that he had reached his. I think it was time for a change of scenery there.
About every 4 years for that guy. If you were to pinpoint one person or event that occurred during the early years of the current core that's led them to being a perennial Stanley Cup contender, what or who would you say it was?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and I think what I would point out for that is honestly the loss to Detroit in 2008, I think, was critical. I think I remember so well, covering that and watching those players. I'll never forget what that locker room was like after that loss. And that, of course, that loss happened here in Pittsburgh. The Red Wings won that Stanley Cup on the Penguins' home ice at Mellon Arena. Um, I remember watching Nick Lidstrom walk through the underside of the Civic or Mellon Arena with the Stanley Cup, and just standing there watching it, like, I can't believe I'm watching this occur in this building. Like, this is crazy. And it really hit the players hard. That really hit the players. And one player who stands out to me, and he ended up not being around for the next year that they won, and he totally knew he wouldn't be, which is why he reacted like this. Ryan Malone stands out to me. He was sitting in that locker room. He had his head down. He declined to talk to the media, and he, in a kind way, he wasn't a jerk. He was never a jerk. He was always very nice to deal with. But he just had his head down and just, asked if he could just have a minute to himself. And I think it was very clear he knew, I'm not going to be brought back here. There was my chance. It just slipped away. And the rest of the team, even the ones that were going to come back, that smarted, seeing a team that was more experienced than you. You came that close, but ultimately they had the edge. They beat you on your home ice. I think that was a lesson that really stuck with the core of this team, the guys that went on to win that next year and to become contenders every year. And I think from that point forward, losing for this team has never been an option again. Any year that they don't win a Stanley Cup, the bar has been set. That's the goal.
I mean, every time I watch the season start, that's my expectation. I'm not gonna lie to you.
It's every fan's expectation. Every Penguins fan, that's the full expectation, is they will win the Stanley Cup or it's a failure of a year.
We're spoiled. We've got great athletes. We spend to the cap.
Yep.
You've got good leadership at the top, regardless of what people say about Jim Rutherford. He pulls the strings most times in the right direction. And if he does it,
he does.
He's got a way to make it happen, to get rid of what he needs to and bring in something that's going to be productive.
He has been successfyou can't argue with the record. He has largely been successful since he's been here. And when you compare with every other team in the league, the Penguins have done pretty darn well under this current leadership.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Marleau has not won a Stanley Cup yet, right?
He has not. He
Okay.
has not.
This is year. He's due.
Well, he that's why he's here. That's why he really was excited to come. And I think everybody has this dream of him kind of being that second guy that gets handed the Stanley Cup after Crosby. That would be the dream, is for him to be that sort of grizzled old veteran that never won the cup that gets that incredible opportunity. So he seems like a great guy. He really does. And he's had a fantastic career, and always a shame when a guy like that has a fantastic career like that, but is missing that punctuation mark on it. So that would be fantastic.
Let's hope we can get that. All right, so let's fast forward then. We're standing here right now, July 10th, training camp slated open, right? You've told me a few times in our conversations, our tweets back and forth, you don't think it's going to happen. What makes you say that?
Well, I mean, I think if we kind of look at what's happening in the country right now, so we look at, like, here we are, and we have the virus ticking upward in a large number of states. We have some states where it's becoming absolutely epidemic again. We have states like mine here in Pennsylvania where we are starting to backtrack some of the openings of things that were going on. So I feel like we are trending in a direction as a country where the first thing I'm thinking isn't how fast can we rush back into something like sports. It just doesn't feel like a wise decision to me. And I feel like that is kind of corroborated when you see what happened at Tampa Bay's training camp, and you have a bunch of players and staff test positive and they have to shut camp down. This has happened in a Major League Baseball camp as well. So you start getting people into close proximity, and you start increasing the likelihood that you're going to get positive test results. So far, I think what I read is that you've had a total of 26 players out of 250 who have reported, who have tested positive. So I know it's easy for, there are some people I've seen just kind of dismiss, okay, so they tested positive. What if they're never symptomatic? Who cares? They're well-conditioned athletes. No, if they never get sick, what does it matter? Uh, there's a really big span between, being asymptomatic and dying. You can, there are a lot of people who have gotten the virus who are not in the categories of being old or being underlying conditions, who have ended up with lasting damage to things like their ability to for their lungs to function properly, which is something that as a hockey player could end your career. So there's stuff like that to worry about. What I worry about also is you talk about putting them in the two hub cities, you try to keep them in some kind of bubble. Um, I don't know how successfully you keep them in a bubble, honestly. Like, so you have to, they have to stay in a hotel. They have to eat. You're going to have service personnel interacting with these folks. The service personnel. So let's say no players get sick, or which I feel like is a stretch. I feel like players are going to get sick.
Sure.
But let's say we never hear the stories of the service personnel who take an illness home to their immunocompromised family member or their elderly mother who lives with them, or these kinds of things. And I just wonder, is any of this worth it? Like, I know we're all bored. I know we would all die to see hockey on TV right now. I know, I get it. I get it. I really do, but you just wonder about the consequences of it. And when you see the positive test results start to come back, if it's 26 players out of 250, that's like 10%.
Sure.
I don't like the numbers.
Sure. I mean, Tampa shut down right away. I mean, that
Yep.
was it. Tampa shut. And the Pens had a player. Do you know who the player was for the Pens?
I do not. I do not. They're not releasing that.
Yeah, which is okay. I'm fine with
Yeah,
it.
I'm
Yeah.
fine with it.
Whoever it was, they said stayed home. They quarantined for 14 days, and they might be one of the guys. Yeah, apparently, the Penguins have quite a few guys who are doing the voluntary skate thing.
Yeah,
So
they have more players than most teams. So
that's very
they do have a
promising in
fair
and of
number.
itself. That doesn't surprise me just because of the drive and the leadership that we talk about. I mean, I'm sure those guys communicate quite a bit, even off the ice. You know,
Absolutely. And they're a team, I mean, let's face it, they're a team that feels like they should be a contender. If this return to play does come off, they're a team that feels every bit like they should be in the mix to win the Stanley Cup. And they should feel like that. They're an incredibly deep team this year. And they have only made good moves to add to this team and give themselves the depth. So they should feel optimistic about their chances. And I think they're a team that wants to get back to work. So I'm not surprised to hear that at all.
So the other day, I was listening to Bob Grove on the Fan, and he said our Temi Panarin brought to light that there were other issues on the fringe that still needed resolved. So he talked about escrow
Mhm.
money that the owners are talking about, 10% one-time salary reduction, and he said the players inevitably the owners said the players will recoup that. He went so far as to say the salary cap might freeze at 81 million for the next few years. I mean, are these legitimate issues at this time? Because Friday, it was the first time I actually heard about it. And why wait till now? Why wait this
Mhm.
close? I mean, July 10th is not that far away. Why bring this to the surface? Did they actually voted today, didn't they? Today was the vote.
Yeah, they're supposed to. I haven't heard if the vote took place yet. The vote was supposed to take place. They need a vote of all members of the NHL Players Association on the CBA. So they're trying to vote on a new collective bargaining agreement between the Players Association and the owners that would last about 6 more years. They had originally voted to um, to keep the current one in place after last season. It would have run through, I believe, the end of 2021-22 season, but now they are looking to revisit that. And part of the reason they're looking to revisit it is because the new CBA will put in place some of the provisions for the return to play. They're looking to address all of that at this time. But yeah, Panarin makes really good points. It obviously is the players putting themselves on the line here, and every year the players have this escrow withheld, and my understanding is they get refunded if the owners don't take a loss in that year, but otherwise, they're paying out to the owners to make sure the owners are sort of made whole and not taking losses. So
Okay.
the owner's salary, the owner's investments are being protected, and that's exactly what he was talking about in what he posted. That he feels they protected the owners' salaries for too long, and that they're the ones out there taking this risk, and that they need to be better compensated. So I think at some point the players escrow, after all of the current situation where there's obviously going to be incredible losses from this season, regardless of the return to play, because the NHL is an incredibly gate-driven league, and even if they return to play, there's not going to be any fans in the stands. So we're talking about incredible losses this year, and I read at some point that the escrow on the part of these players could be up to something like 35%. Um, so we're talking about a lot of money for them. And, they obviously need to work that out. I do think that they are planning to agree to that 10% salary reduction, but it would then be paid back to them over the course of a couple of years. They are agreeing to flatten the salary cap over these next couple of years to help the owners recoup some of these losses. So there's a lot that's being discussed to figure out how they're going to deal with the losses that have come from the pandemic. So,
It'll be
um,
interesting for some of those teams that have some high end veterans that are up in years, because you're going to have to do
yeah,
something with some of those guys if you're stuck at 81 million for the next couple of years. Yes, the Penguins are one of those teams, but I guess this is maybe the fanboy homer in me. I haven't really seen that drop off in them. I think they keep going out and finding the John Marinos and whatnot, but some of those other teams, they're going to struggle.
no, you're right. And I don't think the Penguins have that glaring player that you look at and say, wow, this is a guy that you really want to see, with the exception of one that I think everybody would like to maybe buy out. I think, and that's not necessarily an age issue, but more of a maybe they overpaid that guy issue. Um, or not really overpay, but maybe a little too long of a term. But I don't see them in a situation like other teams where they have that aging veteran that you look at and say, wow, they're really regretting the salary and the length of term that they gave that player. Yeah, so I don't think that's a homer thing at all. I think Penguins have managed pretty well.
I mean, I know exactly who you're talking about, and I love his game, but I would agree. He got, even when they signed him, I mean, I love his game, but he's got too many years on that contract at his age and his lack of durability to a certain degree.
I don't think there was anybody clamoring for him. Or I think we maybe are we talking about two different players? Are you talking about Patrick Hornquist?
Yeah.
I see. I disagree. I think Patrick Hornquist there was a point in time I thought, wow, they are potentially going to regret the length of this deal, and they still may. That said, I feel like the last year he's rebounded
Oh,
enough
definitely.
that, yeah, a huge rebound. So I'm not even worried about him at this point. The guy that I'm talking about is Jack Johnson, that I think they gave too long a term right from the start.
He's a
Um,
sell-off. For me, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what drove that contract, honestly.
I don't think there was anybody else clamoring for the length of contract.
Right.
Like, if you wanted to bring him in for a year or two, like, I just don't think there was anybody else out there trying to outbid you on that deal. So I'm not sure I'll ever understand that one. But yeah, it overall though, but I do agree with you as in terms of the and I wouldn't even call it a lack of durability as much as I would call it when you play the type of game Patrick Hornquist plays.
Rugged.
Um, yeah, your body's going to wear down. It just is.
Yeah.
It's going to wear down sooner than a type of player that doesn't play that kind of game.
I mean, with Johnson as a number 6, okay, I'm fine with that. He'll get his minutes. He'll do some of the things they need him to do. But, when he was jumping up there in the top 2 pairings and playing exorbitant amount of minutes, I'm just scratching my head, just trying to figure
Well,
out why.
that was a sheer fact of injuries leaving you no
Right.
choice.
Right.
Yeah, when Jack Johnson's playing those kind of minutes, you have a big problem. You're in a bad state.
Well, that leads me to my next question. The Pens were clearly hamstrung by injury over and over this year. Then they got healthy, but while they
Hmm.
were fighting the curse, they played their best hockey. You know that, and I know that. Why was that happening? What was going on in that locker room? What was going on in that ice for them to play like that?
Yeah, I think the Penguins really, they're always a team. And for as far back as I've been watching and covering this team, I feel like they have always been a team that's thrived on adversity. And they typically, you know, uh, they typically find a way to raise the level of their game during times like that. The players who remain find a way to raise the level of their game. When Sidney Crosby's out, Evgeny Malkin finds a way to raise his game. When Malkin's out, Crosby finds a way to raise his game. But I think what really happened this year is you really saw this whole team buy in to a mentality around Mike Sullivan's system in a way that really impressed me. And I felt like it had a lot to do with the kinds of players they started to bring in. Um, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna sit here and point fingers at a guy like Phil Kessel and say like, oh, that kind of player's attitude was a problem, because I don't, I'm not in the locker room when the players are, having those moments. I don't know for a fact, but I do know that when you have a player, say like a Brandon Tanev, that can't comes in and sort of personifies the work ethic that you'd be looking for, and personifies that idea of, the we're sort of all in on this mentality of all playing this same system. um, they just really sort of bought into this next man up mentality, and whoever's in the lineup, we're going to play the same way, we're going to buy into the system, we're not going to care about who the individuals are, we're going to play the system. And it really was incredibly effective. And when they started filtering the players back in, um, you started seeing them gradually get away from what was working. I also think it's, sometimes it's not an excuse, but actually a reason that a team is really truly exhausted. And I think the team worked really, really hard compensating for all of those injuries the first part of the season, and the fact that it eventually caught up with them. I don't think you can really blame them too terribly much for that.
It's funny how just going back a second. It's funny how you picked up. I was thinking of Hornquist, but it's also funny bring up Tanner. You know, initially there was a lot of people clamoring about the contract he got, but then you
Oh
see
yeah.
him play and what he brings to that ice. It's unreal. Like the guy just goes a million miles a minute, and he is so fun to watch. I love when those guys
Yes.
jump on the ice. I love when he gets out there. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah, he really, I mean, to me, he just really came in and brought with him an attitude that helped to me really helped personify what I thought changed about the team this year, and really made it a team that was fun to get behind. And you wanted to see them succeed. You wanted to see that team sort of beat the adversity that they were facing, because they just seemed like a bunch of guys that really deserved it, that really were out there working so hard and fighting that adversity. And you just really wanted to see them find a way to overcome the incredible odds that they just kept. It seems like almost every game, another guy down, and okay, it doesn't matter. We'll get another guy up from Wilkes-Barre, and that guy will just fill in. And for quite a while, it really worked, and they can credit that with even the fact that when they started to tail off a little bit, you had the luxury of being in a pretty good position points wise, that you weren't fighting from behind for a playoff spot.
Sure. I like where they sit to a certain degree. I like them sitting at number 5, to be honest with you. I mean, they
I'm
probably wouldn't
fine
have
with
ended
that.
up there. I could see them jumping up over Philadelphia because they were just starting to feel it there as things were starting to happen. You think the new additions, starting with like Zucker, you think they're going to fit in? You think they're going to learn this system again? Because they really, going the whole way back to him coming on board, they really, all the new guys didn't have a chance to kind of mesh and grow together that they need going forward. Do you think they're going to have enough time in this, if we get started in this short frame?
Well, I would say Jason Zucker to me is a guy that they handpicked as fitting their system already.
Yeah.
So, I feel like he kind of comes in with that advantage. And I think you could see it in what did he play, 15 games with them or something
Yeah.
like that before
Something
the
like that.
pause? I think it was 15 games, and I think he scored 6 goals in those 15 games. And on the flip side, Alex Galchenyuk, who obviously didn't work out for them, played something like 45 and scored 5 goals. So when you're comparing like who's a fit in the system, you have one guy that was a total non-fit with the style they're trying to play, and you have a guy who comes in and seems like he just gets it,
Yeah.
and who is a really good skater, really fast, and I feel like has the speed to fit right into the system, but also has that finishing ability that makes him really dangerous. So I feel like um, he's a player they specifically handpicked for that reason, and I think it's taking him no time at all to fit in the system. He can easily play on either of those first 2 lines. I think he's going to end up on the Malkin line, but he can easily play on either of the first 2, and they've tried him on both at this point, to sort of see where he might feel comfortable and where he might end up. And then they have the other additions they brought in, I feel like are really promising. Evan Rodriguez to me was a
I like that too.
surprise. Yeah, I really like him. I thought he was just really I don't know if he'll be in the top 4 lines or not when they start the return, but he to me is a guy that could just sub in, and great speed, and just that same thing with the work ethic, just gets out there and works really hard. Patrick Marleau I'm really excited about joining this team. And I just think from the sheer hard work and will perspective, you can't argue with the career he's had. You can't argue with the talent that he has. The only thing you could be concerned about is if he still has the speed. And I thought in his handful of games with the Penguins, I didn't ever notice him as being a detriment to their speed.
Right.
So to me, that's all that counts is, as long as he's not bringing them down, I'm fine with that. I don't love the addition of Connor Sherry. It just wasn't my favorite. But Sidney Crosby obviously likes playing with him. He's right back on that first line. I think he'll probably stay there. And, you know, Sidney Crosby's pretty good at determining who he likes to play with, and when he feels comfortable with a player, it typically works out well. So
Jerry opened the ice up for him. There's no question about it, though. He can move. He can move.
yeah,
You know it. I know it. He opens the ice up for Sid, although Sid can skate well. It'll be interesting, and that was good. My next question actually was going to be about Jake coming back. Jake,
hmm
who's he going to play with? Is he going to play with Sid? Is he going to play with Evgeny? Who's he going to play with? Because that kid, you stick him in with either one of those guys, he's
yeah.
going to be spectacular.
He's been really great aside Malcolm when he's played with him, but make no mistake, Jake Ensel is Sidney Crosby's winger. He, for years I feel like we've had this dance of when is Sidney Crosby going to get his winger, and he's got him. This is his guy, and they've been nothing short of magic together. And Jake Ensel being back for the playoffs is something the Penguins, an incredible advantage the Penguins weren't going to have if the playoffs proceeded as they were supposed to in the time frame they were supposed to. So 100% he's on Sidney Crosby's wing, and I think that puts Jason Zucker on Evgeny Malkin's wing with Brian Rust, and I think that gives you a pretty terrifying top six.
That's insane to think about that.
Right?
I think Rodriguez will get his PT now because, with Bugstead out and Dominic Simone done for the year, I mean, that's a door open for Evan Rodriguez. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays itself out. Going back to Galchenyuk, though, just a second, I never really looked at him as like the marquee piece getting back from Phoenix. Now, granted, I understood the salary move. I was okay with that, but I'm a big P.O. Joseph fan. I got to tell you, I've seen it. I think I've even tweeted you about him a few times. I've seen that kid play. Oh man, I love his game. My son and I we've gone up to Wilkes-Barre Scranton and seen him play, but we live just a little over an hour away from Hershey, and we go up there and watch the little Penguins play up there. And that kid sits on the bench for about, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 minutes with his headphones on before anybody's even on the ice, just kind of concentrating. I see him going through his progressions, his moves, whatever. He's envisioning the game. And then he comes out there and the way he skates, I just want to see him a few pounds, though. He's really, man,
that seems to consistently be the knock on him, is that he needs to gain some strength, but I think, I agree with you. I think he by far was viewed as the marquee piece coming out of that deal. If he pans out as the type of prospect he's supposed to be, they will have gotten a win there for sure.
Are they bringing him into camp with them? Is he coming into camp with them?
Yeah, he will definitely. This upcoming camp, you mean in July? Yeah, I believe they're going to bring a fair number of those. I mean, they're obviously not going to play, but I do believe a fair number of the baby Penguins are supposed to join for that camp, just as sort of reserves. I believe that they're still going to do that because those teams are shut down. They're not going to resume their seasons. So, that was originally the plan. I guess where it's ending up at this point, I'm not sure.
I could see him challenging for Schultz's spot next year if he can put some weight on. I seriously do. I mean, I don't know what your gut is on that, what you're hearing, but I would find it hard to believe they would bring Justin Schultz back. And
I feel like Justin Schultz is going to come back for pennies. I thought he was a goner. I thought he was 100% gone after this terrible season that he's had. But I think the upside of Justin Schultz having a terrible season is that he doesn't command on the open market nearly what he was going to command. Yeah. And I think the Penguins could probably convince him to come back for a really fair rate and do that thing again where you bet on yourself, hey, Justin, you had a terrible year. Do you want to sign a 1-year deal and see how it goes? So, and maybe that's the bridge. You
That's an
know, maybe.
interesting take on him. I personally like him. Like, I love his game when he's healthy, but he just seems to
Oh
have
yeah,
been
of
through
course.
so much. I mean, like, it just, I don't know. He seems to have been snake bitten a lot recently. But he was great for us during those cup years, and I
Oh
can see
yeah,
why he was such a high caliber guy for Edmonton. I mean, I clearly can see that.
absolutely. I mean, I'm a big fan of his game when, you know, up until this year. And I honestly wonder, I mean, there's been points this year that I feel like, you know, not to pick on Johnson again, I hate to be that person because I know that's low hanging fruit. A lot of people do. But I feel like often when he has had his most, you know, difficult moments this year, that's been the line that's been the pairing that he's been on. So, you know, is it a fault of, you know, maybe you're just with a pair that's not working out well for you? I'm not sure. But I wouldn't mind giving him another year if he comes back for an incredibly reasonable rate, which I think might honestly be his only choice at this point.
That's great. I'm glad. I'm actually glad to hear that. To be honest with you, maybe they'll move Johnson, and it'll still open the door for PO. Who knows? Um,
Who knows? I'm not sure who's taking that deal on though.
yeah, that's true. But you know what? Rutherford, he will get you.
He's a magician. I would never count him out.
All right, preview the Penguins in Montreal for me just a little bit. Let's suppose that your gut instinct isn't right on this occasion. Just this once.
Yeah, could happen.
Preview that series for me. I heard today that uh, Carey Price is a 40-60 on whether he'll come back and play or not. He's not real sure. I literally just
What?
read it. Yeah, I literally just read it before I got on with you. I was like,
Okay, so that's the first time I've heard that.
what?
And if that's the case, then God bless them. How many can Montreal forfeit? Because that's really their only shot. You know, Carey Price is their honestly their only chance in this series that he steals it. They were sellers at the trade deadline. I mean, Montreal was positioning themselves for next year. I think they're stunned that they get an opportunity in the playoffs. This is just not this is not a season where Montreal was going forward. So I think I just don't think the depth comes anywhere close to matching the Penguins' depth. I don't think on scoring they can match them. I don't think on defense they can match them. I think on goaltending they probably have an edge over either of the Penguins goalies, quite frankly. And so it's the only edge they have. I, you know, I was on Montreal radio and pretty confidently predicted that I felt that the Penguins would sweep the Canadiens in that series, and you know,
They're coming back
I hate to say it.
fairly healthy, right? They're going to be pretty healthy. They've got a lot of experience, a lot of leadership. So, you would think so. Um,
The
Hopefully, they're
Penguins are a
thinking
deep,
beyond it.
deep team.
Wait, say
Yeah,
that again?
the Penguins are just a deep team. I mean, we talked about even just the top two lines alone, you know,
Oh, yeah.
and then you roll out a fourth line that I think is, you know, potentially the best fourth line in hockey. I mean, they can't Montreal can't match it. They just can't match it. And they were a team that really just had no expectation of being a playoff team this year. The only reason they're going to be a playoff team is because the league wants to make up some revenue.
Which is understandable, I guess, to a certain degree. I've always said that I think that hockey would jump over football if there was a way to market it better in the United States because it's what people love. Speed, contact, all those things. And I mean, that's what you get with football, except it's a slower pace.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I have to admit I'm not the biggest football fan. I'm just not. I'll watch during playoffs. I'll watch the Steelers, you know, most weeks. I just if it just doesn't grip me like hockey does. And I feel like anybody that really gave hockey a chance would fall in love with it. So yeah, I agree with you. I don't understand how I don't understand that. I think the NHL is really good at getting in its own way. Um, in a number of ways. And right now, I'm not sure that I'm not sure what I think of even the return to play plan. Like, you know, they have those players test positive in Tampa, and the next day I immediately start reading about the plans for moving to phase 2 of the practice plan. Here's We're now cleared to move to phase 2. Here's what's going to happen. And Steven Stamkos cracked me up. He tweeted just like that emoji where the guy's kind of like this, like
Yeah.
the thinking guy, and he just commented on it with that. And I'm like, yeah, that same. Like, what are they doing? Like, really? We're just gonna ignore that this happened and we're just gonna just plow forward? Oh, okay.
I'm
All
sure
right
it's
then,
scary for
guys.
some of those guys. You know, I'm positive it's scary for some of those guys. I know down in DC where I live, um, I respect them. I honestly do.
Yeah.
Hopefully, some of my friends that know I'm a diehard Penguin fan are listening to this after I release it and understand I do respect that team. I think they do a
Oh
great
yeah.
job of marketing. Um, Alex Ovechkin now. I think he's really improved his game, and I know it's really, really gone to another level in terms of people being excited and interested in the Capitals down here. I mean, they always had that.
Absolutely.
They always had that excitement, but for their sake, and I was happy for them. They got over the
Me
Penguins a
too.
few years ago and won themselves a cup, deservedly so.
Yep.
Deservedly
I
so.
was happy for them too. I really was. Like, and for a player like Ovechkin, that you hope at some point in his career he manages that, because that would be a shame of a career to not have that punctuation on it. So yeah, my sister lives down there. My niece was actually a member of the Capitals. It's like cheer. I'm not sure what they call them, the cheer squad that
Mhm.
they had. But yeah, I was through that whole time that they were playing the Penguins every year in the playoffs. So that was kind of a fun little family rivalry going on. But yeah, a lot of respect for that team and a lot of respect for those fans. That's one of the best rivalries in
Oh,
sports to me.
absolutely.
I love it.
I, I'm actually kind of glad the Philly was doing better this year, to be honest with you. I mean, I,
Oh yeah.
I think they still, you saw the writing on the wall because they were really good down at Lehigh Valley. They had a ton of talent down there. You know, Hart in goal he's solid, if not spectacular, but he's so young. I mean, I'm glad they're coming around. I don't know how they'll fare in the playoffs. They don't seem to have the depth to be able to roll through teams, but
Not quite yet, I don't think, but yeah, I mean, it's always better when Philly's a viable, rival. I'm never happy when either the Penguins or the Flyers are bad and the other franchise is great,
right.
because then the rivalry is just no fun. But yeah, I think Carter Hart to me is what could change everything for them, because it's been a long time since they've had a real goalie.
Yeah.
They've
Yep.
been probably since Ron Hextall, since they've had a goalie that you feel like, wow, this guy could be a franchise-changing goalie for them. So, hopefully he's it.
And with Lindblom coming back and he's skating now, I mean, he's not going to play right now, but
Yeah,
that's just a great story in and of itself. Like I'm excited for the guy.
I'm excited for him too. I was excited that he was happy to be out there. I did not know how I felt about the decision-making process of having a guy who is still in cancer treatment
Yeah.
being out there in a group practice at this time. I thought, wow, this sounds really bad. I am not sure I could sign off on that. Obviously his doctors must have, or he wouldn't be out there.
Yeah.
I I just shook my head. I was like, "Are you kidding?" Like, okay, but yeah, I was happy for him too. I obviously, I'm really glad to hear that he's doing well enough to be out there. That's the key thing for me.
Let's do some predictions. Your
Yeah.
Eastern and Western Conference Finals. Who do you see in there?
I have a really hard time in the East predicting against the Tampa Bay Lightning. I feel like for a few years now, they have just been threatening to be that team that comes out and And I every year I just feel like, okay, this has to be Tampa's turn. This just has to be their year. Um, so I'll probably still say Tampa, although I feel like, as we've talked about, I feel like the Penguins have so much depth, and I feel like have a really, really good shot to upset things in the East. They have so much experience, and adding the depth to it, coming in healthy, they could really, really make a run at this. But let's go with the Lightning, just because I feel like for a few years they have had it coming. And in the West, I kind of have been liking the Colorado Avalanche. Yeah, I feel like the Blues have a chance to come out again. I feel like not enough has changed in a negative way for them that I could bet against them. They're getting Vladimir Tarasenko back too, who was out hurt when this all happened. But yeah, I just feel like Colorado's got a lot of depth, and I like them come out of the West.
Colorado gets McKinnon back though, so
Yeah, they
yeah,
do.
that kind of offsets it to a certain degree. I actually personally like McKinnon just a little bit better than Tarasenko.
Oh yeah,
Just,
he's a star.
who's your Stanley Cup champ?
I'm gonna go. I feel like the champ comes out of the East. I just feel like the East has the teams that I'd be more scared of, and I'm gonna have to go with Tampa again, unless the Penguins somehow find a way to upset this thing. Because I really deep down, there was a time this season, particularly when the Penguins were, kind of going on that run through the injuries, that I felt like this is their year. There is no team beating this team this year. I felt really confident about it. So I kind of feel silly backtracking now and not saying the Penguins. I feel like it absolutely could be them. So yeah, I feel like in my gut, they could really benefit too from this layoff, and from, when you think of guys like, you think of Crosby and Malkin being in their 30s and having this chance to rest. You think of Patrick Hornquist and Patrick Marleau having a chance to have this rest. You think of, Matt Murray having a chance to maybe reset a little bit. There's a lot of reasons to really like how the Penguins could look coming out of this. So that to me is kind of exciting. Maybe, maybe the fact that you have a bunch of Tampa Bay Lightning in camp, having gone through what they've just gone through, maybe that doesn't bode well for them either. I don't know how that pans out. Like we said, none of the players seem to be symptomatic, but who knows if anybody has any complications. There's a lot of variables here. You never know how things pan out, right?
That's the best part of hockey playoffs, if you ask me.
Typically, though, you don't like the pandemic factor to be in there,
Just the factors that get thrown in there. You just never know. You lose one guy for one game, and that can upset the apple cart. And you might have been lead the pack right there. And that's something that I just. If you don't watch playoff hockey, you don't know what you're missing. I always tell people.
Oh, you're absolutely correct. Yeah, and
So
any team can come out.
You mentioned Matt Murray. Next year's scheduled to be an expansion year with Seattle. GM Jim Rutherford has had some tough decisions to make, including the goalie. He's got to make a goalie situation here is a little. He's got to choose between Matt Murray and Tristan Jarry. A few years ago, it was Marc-Andre Fleury and Murray. Now it's Matt Murray and Tristan Jarry. What do you think? Who are you? Your GM JR.
It's kind of funny that Matt Murray could find himself in the same situation on the other side of it, huh? That he found himself in a couple of years ago when he was the beneficiary. Yeah, I feel like these playoffs, assuming they happen, could be really critical for Matt Murray. Matt Murray goes out there this year in these summer playoffs and wins the Penguins another Stanley Cup. And perhaps he's entrenched, and perhaps the decision is made, because I do think he will be the starter for the Penguins in the playoffs. And I think that's a given. I think they like his experience. I don't think they like throwing Tristan Jarry in there being inexperienced, no matter how good of a year he had. I think Matt Murray's been their guy, for the playoffs the whole time.
That's
They have
Sully's guy.
always, he is, but he's also, I mean, to Sullivan's credit, he's right that, Murray has played playoffs and he has won Stanley Cups, and Tristan Jarry has not been there. And I think they are rooting for him to be the guy that can take the reins and lead them into this. I think his leash will be short. I think if he, has a rough, period of time, say he's not setting the world on fire during that play-in round versus Montreal, and they probably still win, but maybe they don't win it as efficiently as perhaps they would have with a better goalie performance. Maybe you see Jarry come in at that point, but I think they very much want him to be the one to start, and I think he will get that opportunity. And if he comes in and just rolls, and he is typically better down the stretch and in the playoffs, then maybe that makes the decision for him. Personally, when I watch the two, not making any judgment on either one as people or anything like that, but just style wise, I like Jarry's style better personally, just because I like the puck handling. I like a goalie that likes to handle the puck. I like Jarry's kind of a little more athletic style. I like the way he can put the puck back into play and sort of start the play off the stick like that. Matt Murray's not that guy. He's not a guy who's comfortable with that. He'll hold the puck. He'll stop the play. Jarry just can help the Penguin system by keeping the puck moving and being part of that. I like him for that reason. That said, I think he could have every chance if Murray falters, but if Murray comes in and plays well in the playoffs, I think he will entrench himself again.
It'll be interesting to see who comes up behind whichever one of those guys leaves. I know I've been kind of keeping track of Emil Lormy.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of that kid.
I like that
Big
kid.
fan.
I like his
Yeah.
personality. I was reading something about him when we drafted him, how he brings the same personality to the table that Marc-Andre Fleury had.
Very much.
And you could see it on his Twitter, although I don't understand what he's writing because he writes in his native tongue. But you could see it. You could see it when you go watch him play. You could see he's a very lighthearted kid, and
Yep.
I could see him being the future there. Potentially.
Yep, he's a talented kid. He's a very talented young Finnish goalie. He definitely has potential to be the next guy up.
So that's exciting to see. Even though DeSmith might be the backup there for a couple of years if you lose Jarry or whatever the case may be. But I mean, it's not like the pipeline is completely empty like it was a few years ago. So
Definitely not.
I was enthralled watching a between period piece a few months ago. It was about the Black Girl Hockey Club, and I know you support them with some of the things you do. Can you explain a little bit about what that is and how it's impacting the game of hockey? Because I really was into it. Like I usually leave the TV in between periods and whatever, and I come back for the game. This grabbed my attention, and I really was into what they had to say and do.
That is so cool. Yeah, I loved. I was very excited seeing them on that intermission segment too. I believe it was, I believe they were at a game here in Pittsburgh when that was playing because it came up on the big screen and the group was here in town. Renee Hess, who leads that group, is a force of nature. She's amazing, and really. My understanding of it is, that they started to try to help. I talked earlier about that idea of how I felt comfortable getting into sports because I saw people on ESPN Sports Center who looked like me, here's Linda Cohn, Robin Roberts, and wow, I could be a woman and do this. And, what's crazy and what me being, a white woman hadn't really thought about, to kind of my embarrassment, because you never really know what you don't live through until you hear the perspectives of other people, is wow, these women love this game, but some of them have never gone to a game in person because they are keenly aware that they are just going to feel like something that doesn't belong. You know, I'm going to be in this building and there's not going to be any other Black fans. You know, there's not going to be anybody else for me to feel like a sense of community with. And I think, you know, really they established the group to try to make themselves have a sense of community and you know, make other women of color feel that they were part of something, that you can come to a game and, you know, we're a community and we're in this together and you're supported, and come and love this game, and just, you know, we're all here for each other. And just an incredible thing to see, and an incredible thing to understand, really, that the sport, from a fan perspective, and for years it's been very clear to me that from an on-ice perspective, when you see the players, that the sport is not nearly as inclusive as you would like the sport to be. From a fan perspective, I have to say I hadn't really thought about how not inclusive it was, and how people who wanted to be into the game might feel excluded. So that really made me feel much more conscious of wanting to make sure to, you know, consciously try to make people, you know, all people feel welcome and included in the sport. But what they are doing now that is so amazing to me is really helping to lead these discussions around race in the sport. And, you know, we're at this incredible moment in our country right now in terms of seeing this sort of civil rights movement
Yeah.
that I think is just so important. And unfortunately, we have had so many players step forward and say, you know, I'm a Black player and here's what I went through during my journey to get here. And you know, we had Akeem Aliu, who wrote that incredible piece, if you got a chance to read it, in the Players Tribune, who talked about coming up through the game and how he was treated, and how even coaches were a part of that mistreatment. And nobody's doing anything to step in and stand up for him. And it can't be this way. And we all have to be part of calling that behavior out and eradicating it from the game. We all have to be part of calling out when we see these even casual things that people say. And there are players in the National Hockey League today who are on record as having said things like that about teammates. And I think about, there are a couple of them on the New York Rangers who I follow pretty closely. And when I think about them having a teammate like Keandre Miller, who just had a terrible experience on a Zoom chat recently, where he was subjected to a bunch of racial slurs from somebody who came into the chat deliberately to torment him. And he just sat there having to take it. And the team didn't really step up and do anything to stop it for him. And I think about a player like that coming into a locker room with, you know, players who maybe haven't been known to be that supportive of Black teammates. You know, this is the kind of thing that has to get out of the game. So anyway, I'm getting into a long-winded answer about all of this, but it's so important. You know, it's so important that we all play a role in calling that stuff out, because you know, that's how it gets eradicated from the game. And I have so much respect anytime I see someone call out that kind of behavior and say, you know, okay, this isn't all right. And, you know, just making it a culture where that kind of stuff isn't okay anymore and isn't just swept under the rug. Like, oh, it's just this is just what the culture is, and boys will be boys, and like there can't be any more of that stuff. And this is how you have people not feel comfortable either as part of the game or as a fan of the game or trying to break into the game as a journalist or any other aspect of the sport. It, they talk about how hockey is for everyone, and as of now, to me, like that's just a marketing slogan that really has nothing to do with reality. It's like we throw up one night a year that we say, oh, here's hockey's for everyone night, and we think we've done our job. And what about the other 364
Yeah.
days of the year, though?
Right.
So
You know,
so that group is incredible leadership, in my opinion, at trying to bring all of this stuff out into the conversation.
we're in such a crossroads right now. We've gone full circle with race. We're dealing with a pandemic that, quite frankly, we don't know what direction we're going. Hockey, going back to what you were saying before, why you think it's not going to happen, in all honesty, is just a little small piece of what's going on in the world right now. I mean, we need to take care of real life problems right now, not who's actually going to hold the cup up at the end of the day. I mean, that just makes us feel good if we're part of that fan base or whatever, and I wholeheartedly support your mentality and your views. I mean, I'm on the same page as you, to be honest with you, especially because, my real job is a teacher. And as
Yeah.
a teacher, I deal with, my high school literally has kids, the last time I checked, from 70 different countries. So we
Wow.
have a
Wow.
melting pot of students, and it's awesome to be part of that community. It really is. So I get it. I really get where you're coming from. Um, I'm going to keep us moving forward. I'm actually my
Yeah.
last question. All right. So you're
Okay.
not a communicator. You don't work for corporate communications. You're not writing hockey. What would you do?
That is a great question. I I thought when I was a kid, um, like I said, I thought I always wanted to be a writer of some sort. I thought I would be a different type of writer. Like I thought as a little kid, I thought I might be a novelist or that something like that kind of writer. Um, but what I really sometimes regret is that I didn't decide to go to veterinary school and proceed with being a veterinarian. Um, I think I think what shied me away from it was thinking there would be too much sadness and I would be too heartbroken all the time.
Yeah.
And I've talked to my vet and said, I kind of wish I would have done this, and I I just thought it would be too sad. And she said, the sad thing isn't what you think. It isn't like when you have to put an animal to sleep because they're people who've loved them all their lives, and now you've reached the end of the road. She said, what makes you sad is the people. What makes you sad is when you have a situation where there's an animal that you desperately want to help, and you just don't think the people are caring for it properly at home. And yeah, and there's not much you can do, and you kind of have to send the animal home with those people. Or you have an animal that the people really want to help it, and it has a major medical problem, and maybe they can't afford to get it the treatment they need, and you're trying to help every way you can, but at the end of the day, they maybe just can't do everything they want to for it. So situations like that. And that would be hard for sure, but I think the older I get, I think I could have been okay with it, and I think I could have done a good job and made a difference. So
Everything
yeah.
else in life, you grow into your role. I know in my house, it's like a zoo here. We don't tell the kids no, essentially, for any of our pets. We've got anything from a hermit crab to a hamster to a rabbit. We've got it all here. We could have our own petting zoo and make money off it, to be honest with you. All right. My last thing I do a segment called Decade Definers.
It's
And
awesome.
I want you to be included in it this time.
Okay.
I want you to tell me the 5 best hockey interviews that you've had since breaking into covering the NHL in the mid 90s.
Okay.
I would
So
love to
let's
hear that.
see. Yeah, there's definitely been a lot. I would say, so the first one that came to mind was the first interview I ever did that was like a one-on-one sit-down type interview with a player, and when I was still in college. Um, I did a cover story for a publication I was writing for at that time, the first publication I ever wrote for, um, a cover story on Kevin Stevens when he was first coming back from his horrific injury that you probably recall.
I was at that
Um,
game.
oh my gosh, yeah, I was at that game as well, where he, was unconscious, couldn't break his fall, and went down like a ton of bricks, and not a small guy, and just broke everything. And that led to really a lifetime of problems for him in terms of the recovery. Has dealt with a lot of pain medication type issues since then. There's been a lot. But at the time, I remember just sitting across from him. It's the first kind of sit-down interview I've done with a player one-on-one, and he was just wonderful to talk to. But it was really, really something listening to him describe his experience of going through that recovery. I remember him talking about how the doctors told him his face looked like a potato chip somebody had trampled on, like stuff like that. I'll never forget it. It was crazy. Then. Some of the ones I thought of were ones where I was just kind of part of like a press conference type deal that was just really a big deal. And I thought of the one I got to be at. Again, this was I was still in college at the time. Got to be part of the press conference where Mario Lemieux told us all that he had Hodgkin's
Oh,
disease
wow.
and was going to be taking some time off and getting himself well. And I will never forget that, and thinking, wow, what's going to happen here? This is incredible. And and then just following through the whole incredible comeback that he had after that. But just being part of that moment was something I'll never forget. Then I'll always remember the only Stanley Cup I have actually gotten to cover in person at this point in my career, because they've never won one in Pittsburgh. The only one I've been at in person to cover on the road was 2009 in Detroit. And I will always remember being able to be the first one to ask Dan Bilesma a question at that press conference, because he had just joined the team a few months before. And I remember talking with him about, could you have ever seen a few months ago that this is where we were going to end up, here in June? Then another one that stood out for me was, as part of the Professional Hockey Writers Association, one really nice responsibility that I get every year is I get to be part of voting on the Masterton Trophy.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah, love that. I take it really seriously. I love that award because I love that idea of perseverance and sportsmanship and all the things that stands for. And every year our Pittsburgh chapter nominates a player, and then we we'll usually write a story on that player we nominated. This year our nominee was Evgeny Malkin. And then that player goes into the pool of broader nominees, and then we vote for three, our three top picks from the whole NHL. But the year that we nominated Pascal Dupuis, I remember interviewing him after that. And it was, of course, the year that he realized he was not going to be able to play hockey anymore. And that was just a really poignant time to talk with him. He wasn't happy about being nominated for the award that year. He wanted no part of it. He wanted to be playing hockey. It was a really hard thing for him to come to terms with, that this was going to be over for him. But he was still hanging around the team. He was still going to be a part of the team. And really just it meant so much for him to still be able to be around the team and try to contribute whatever way he could. But that was just, that was really, he was a great guy to be around. And I vividly remember getting to talk to him about that. And then the other one that stood out for me, and kind of really a group of them, I have to mention Marc-Andre Fleury, because he just is the best guy that I've gotten the opportunity to deal with in my professional career. I couldn't ask for a nicer person. And the way that he handled, I would say, sort of the series of leading up to his departure from Pittsburgh, and then again when he returned as a member of the Vegas Golden Knights, sort of those series of times of talking to him stand out to me, because I felt that he handled it with such an incredible amount of grace, knowing where it was headed, knowing that he was losing his job to Matt Murray, knowing that he was not going to be ending his career in Pittsburgh as he might have liked, and it was all coming to an end, but just the incredible way that he handled it, and the class and grace, those just stand out to me when I think about it. So I feel like I'd be remiss not to mention him.
I mean, my son loves Sid. He got to meet him a few years ago. We went to a game for his birthday. We went to the opener, and the next day we went out to practice, and Sid came through and he signed autographs, and my son wanted a picture with him. He's like, Dad, I got an autograph, but I didn't get a picture. So we walked down the end where everybody was, and Sid was in his truck, and the guy was doing his thing. And I said, hey, Sid, my son's birthday. I said, you signed his sign. Would you take a picture with him? He's like, absolutely. So my son started to walk out, and the guy who was working security is like, no, get back. Sid's like, hey, listen, it's okay. It's his birthday. I want to take a picture with him,
Aww.
But beyond that, like, my son loves Marc-Andre Fleury. For Christmas this year, he got a Marc-Andre Fleury jersey. He got a Vegas hat. Like, he just, because he sees what a fun-loving and genuine person he is. And that's, that's great for a kid to see from a sports guy. I can't say enough about how much I appreciate that. And I wholeheartedly can understand how you feel about that guy.
Yeah, I just think you hit it on the nose with genuine, and I think there are so many people that you're not really sure if what you're seeing from them when you talk with them, like, is this really who they are? Or if you saw them off the ice, would they be that same person? And I can, I remember I had an experience at the Winter Classic. It was the first one that they did in Buffalo, at the football stadium. And Marc-Andre Fleury was out for that game. Mm-hmm. And I ran into him down in, like, they sent us down to the end zone to, okay, if you want to do your interviews, you need to leave the press box now and go outside and go down to the end zone and stand there and wait for the interviews. And I'm like, so we have to leave now because they're going to go to overtime and there's going to be potentially a shootout and we're not even going to be able to see it from the end zone. Why? So, but it was terrible. And I basically couldn't really see the shootout from where I was situated. But I remember, Marc-Andre saw me there and instantly, just came right over. Hi, how are you? And just like, so sweet and so genuine. And I've sat with him in the press box before when he's been injured, and he just starts chatting with you like a normal person, and he is the same guy all the time. He's just, it's not something he turns on for the cameras. It's just, that's who he is, and very genuine. And I will root for him his whole career wherever he is.
That's awesome. Well, yeah. I want to thank you. Thanks for your time. Your answers have been so insightful. I hope my listeners truly enjoy what you brought to the table. I think you do a spectacular job at what you do, and I hope we have a hockey season and we can talk after the Stanley Cup and discuss all the great things that have gone on between now and then.
I would love to, and I hope nothing more than to be wrong about my predictions and that we do manage to have hockey and that it's great fun and nobody gets sick and it all goes well. I really do. I do not feel warm and fuzzy about it, but I would love to be wrong.
It's okay. It's okay if your prediction comes true too, because there are bigger reasons why it should come true. So I get.
Mm.
Well, thank you, and have a
Great talking to you, Mark. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. This was fun.
take care.
Take care. Talk to you soon.